JSX, also known as JavaScript XML, that helps the developers to write easy user interfaces by combining HTML-like structure with the power of JavaScript. Since it is an extension to JavaScript, this enables developers to create custom user-defined components, leading to create easy-to-understand DOM model structures even for complex applications. JSX can be styled using CSS, and it supports conditional rendering, allowing for much more flexible user interfaces. In this tutorial, you will learn how to write JSX in components, how does React renders the JSX, how to handle open elements in JSX, JSX expressions, how to define components with JSX, Babel JavaScript compiler and how it works, JSX attributes, how to write JSX as variables, how to create a toggleable tab using JSX variables and conditional rendering, looping in JSX, event handlers in JSX, form submit event in JSX, importance of fragments, how to add styles to JSX, how to pass props between parents to child and vice versa using JSX, how to work with nested elements and the children prop. Make sure to watch every topic without skipping, so you can become a master in JSX. Let's start things simply by writing some JSX. To do that, first we have a functional component named app, and inside that we have a return statement. Any JSX that you wish to render must be within this return statement. Writing JSX is pretty much similar to writing HTML. First, let's add a header 1 tag. I will type hello and save that. You can see in the browser the word hello is displayed. Let's inspect and see what is the element behind this hello text. You can see in the element section, header 1 tag has been created. Similarly, we can add another element just like that. I will add a paragraph. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see an error is coming. This is because the functional components can return only one value, but we are returning 2 elements here. To fix this, we can wrap the 2 elements with a div. Now we are returning one element which is having nested elements. If we inspect again, you can see the previous h1 tag followed by the paragraph tag. Any JSX that we write will be compiled down to simple HTML, so the browsers can understand them properly. If we take a look at the index.js inside our project, you can see it is creating a root element with a React DOM, and that root's render method will be used to compile JSX inside our components. Even though writing JSX is pretty much similar to writing HTML, there are many differences that you need to worry about. First one is you cannot have open tags. For example, let's add a simple break tag. Now this tag is completely okay with an HTML environment. Let's save and see what happens. You can see an error. This is because JSX is always looking for the closing tag. Since the break element does not have a closing tag, we can use the self-closing. Let's go ahead and save that, and now the error is gone. Another example would be the image tag. You can see even in the image tag, the self-closing tag is important, which is not required in HTML environment. One of the advantages in JSX is that it allows us to write expressions with them. An expression is written between pair of curly braces, and inside an expression, we can write JavaScript. As an example, let's output the number variable using a JSX expression. Number. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the value is displayed. Similarly, let's add another expression, and inside that, let's print the colors array. Let's now see how we can define the components using JSX. To illustrate this, I have a simple example, which is having a parent component and another component named child. Let's see how to display the content of the child component inside our parent component using JSX. First, we need to import the child component. Import child. This name is now becoming a qualified name for a JSX element, and you can simply add it inside your parent's JSX. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the content from the child component is displayed. Please take a quick moment to like the video so that it would get recommended for more audience. Subscribe to help us grow on YouTube. Turn on notifications to never miss a video on this channel. Up to this point, we have seen how it is easy to work with JSX. Now let's see what React is doing behind the scenes. Every JSX code that we write needs to be compiled so they would get properly understood by the browsers. React is internally using Babel as its JavaScript compiler. If you go to babel.js.io and click try it out link, you can get a similar window, which will display how the components are being compiled. On the left hand side, you can paste your component code. On the right hand side, the related code will be generated. As for my component, I have a simple paragraph tag, which is having a style attribute, a word hello, a nested span element, which is having the word world. To begin with, Babel is passing in the root element of the component, which is a paragraph. Then it is passing the attributes, followed by the children's. As for my component's children, I have a word hello, and then a tag named span, and that tag is also having children's of its own. Similar to HTML elements attributes, we can add attributes to JSX also. You can see I have already added ID and type attribute to the input element. Let's add the title also. Title. Add first name. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the title is displayed. One thing to keep in mind, if your attribute name is having more than one word, you have to type it in camel case. For example, if I wanted to make this read only, I have to type read only. The O is in uppercase, unlike in HTML where it is lowercase. However, if you are defining custom attributes using the data attribute selector, the rule does not apply. You can simply type data ID equals 1. Also, similar to accessibility tags, the aria tags, the camel case rule does not apply. JSX is also giving its own attributes for you to work with. For example, if I type default checked, the value will be checked default. Since JSX is an extension to JavaScript, we cannot use reserved words of JavaScript as our attribute names. One such example is the for attribute name, which is used to highlight the input of the related label. As you know, for is a reserved keyword for looping inside JavaScript. We have to use htmlFor for that. The other keyword is the class. The class is used to add CSS to our elements, but in object-oriented JavaScript, the class is a reserved keyword. So instead of class, we need to use className. One of the great things about JSX is that you can assign them into a variable. For example, I will create a variable const my JSX equals a paragraph element. I will type hello. We can use an expression to output the variable. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the word is displayed properly. As you may have guessed, this is providing much benefits to the developer. One such benefit is the conditional rendering. Now let's look at an example that we are going to use these concepts to create a toggleable tab which will render the content based on the clicks of the user. Let's start by creating 3 buttons. First one will be cats. Second is dogs. And the third is rabbits. We need to use the useState hook to re-render the component when the buttons are clicked. For the useState hook's default variable, let's create a constant object. Since it is a constant, we can define it outside of the component. I will type const default animal equals, and we will have a title property. For the title, let's say not selected, and for the description property, let's add a JSX variable. I will type a paragraph, no animal selected yet, Let's create our use state hook. Const animal set animal equals use state. Notice the import at top and our default object, default animal. And inside our JSX, let's create a header 3 tag, and inside that animal dot title. Initially this is coming from the default object, and for the description an expression, and inside that animal dot description. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the default values now. Now let's create 3 JSX variables which will hold the description for each category. First one is about cats, which is a simple JSX paragraph element. It is having its own nested elements also, followed by 2 other JSX variables, about dogs and about rabbits. Now let's create a function each time the button is clicked. onClick. We will call this toggle tab. As a parameter for the first button, cats. For the second button, dogs. For the third button, rabbits. Let's create this toggle tab function. Const toggle tab equals, which is accepting the parameter name, and inside that we need to update the animal variable. So we will use the use state setter method set animal. The first property is title, which is the name parameter, and then the description. To select the description, we will define another function. We will call it select description. As a parameter, we will pass in the name. We will create that function also. Const select description and a name parameter. Inside this function, we will make use of an switch case statement. Switch name. As for the first case, which is cats, we can return the JSX variable named about cats. For the second and third cases, we can return the related JSX variable. And for the default case, we can return the default value from the initial object. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's click the buttons and see. You can see it is loading the corresponding JSX variable. Now let's see how we can loop inside JSX. One thing to remember is that your standard for loop would not work inside JSX. In React, we use map method to loop. In this example, we have an array named vegetables, an object named car. Let's see how we can use map method to loop these variables. Since map is a JavaScript function, it must be within an expression. Let's take the vegetables array, vegetables.map. This is providing us with 2 variables. First is the item itself, second is the index. Inside this, we can return an element. I will return a list item element. We will make use of an expression here also. Item. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the list is populated. One thing to remember when looping, React needs to keep track of the elements that is generated. As you can see, we are generating a list item element. In order to track this element, we can use the key property, and we have to provide a unique value. As an easy solution, we can pass in the index for this. Now let's loop the car object. This one should also be within an expression. Let's use the object.keys method here. Object.keys. We will pass in the object car. Then we can use the map method, similar to the previous one. Item, comma, index. In here we can return an element, a list item, and inside that we can add an expression, and inside this we will add item, which will denote the field name, plus is another plus, and let's extract the elements from the object car and the item. Let's add the key attribute here also. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the values displayed. Car is red, country is Japan, engine is V6, top speed is 150. In this section, let's see how to use JSX event handlers. JSX has many event handlers for the developers to use, but the most commonly used are onClick and onChange. In this example, I have a function named logged value and a button. Let's bind the onClick event handler with the function. Similar to writing an attribute, onClick, remember the C is capital, and we have to define an anonymous function, just like this, and then call the function. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see when I click, the function is executed. The next event handler is onChange. We need to have an anonymous function here also. We will create a function called log text, and we will define that function here. Now you can see each time I add some text, the log is displayed. Each of these event handlers are providing us with the event parameter. Let's see how to use that to extract the text that we have typed. I will type E to denote the event, and in here let's pass the e.target value, which will extract the text that we have added, and in here text, and we will log that value. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's type some text and see. You can see it is logging the text that we have entered. onSubmit is the next common event handler that we can use. To illustrate this, I have a simple component with a form and a function. The onSubmit should be called in the form element, onSubmit. We have to pass in the name of the function that we are going to use. I will type handle submit, and inside the function let's log some values. Let's go ahead and save that and click submit to see. You can see when I click, the log is displayed, but the page is quickly refreshed. That is because submitting a form is always refreshing the page. To fix this, we can simply use the event parameter here also. You do not need to pass it from here. Let's add E to denote the event, and inside the function e.preventDefault. Let's now check the function. You can see the log is displayed, but the page is not refreshed. And that is how you use the onSubmit event handler. As we have discussed earlier, a functional component can return only one element at a given time. To achieve that, we are using a wrapper element. In most of the cases, it is a div element. But when we inspect the page, you can see that the div element is also there. If you think about it, this div is completely unnecessary element in our DOM. If your application is complex and it is constantly re-rendering, this would create some performance issues for you. React does have a solution for this also. We can make use of a fragment. Fragment is a empty tag. Let's replace this div with a fragment now. Let's go ahead and save. You can see the wrapper div is not here anymore. JSX fragments allow you to group elements together without introducing new elements to the DOM. Let's now see how we can style our JSX. In this example, I have a paragraph with a table, and inside my index.css file, I have a class named red text. Let's apply that class to our paragraph element. If you can remember, the class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. We have to use the class name attribute to add CSS classes. You can see the styles are being applied. The other way of styling is use the style attribute. Let's add some styles to our table using that. This attribute accepts a style object. I have created a style object here. If you take a look at, the property name should be the CSS value in camel case, and the value should be a string. Now let's pass in that value here. If you go ahead and save, you can see the styles are being applied. Since this is a object, we can have sub properties as objects. Inside them we can define another set of styles, and we can use that to override the primary style. Style table styles dot table head. Let's go ahead and save. You can see the styles are being overridden. Let's now see how we can pass in props using JSX. To illustrate this, I have a simple component named app, which is having a variable named color as red, and another component named child. We will now try to pass in the color to the child. Similar to writing an attribute, first we need to name our prop. I will type CLR equals then the value. Let's go ahead and save that. Inside our child component, we need to extract the props. There are two ways that we can do this. We can type props, and inside here we can type props dot name of the property that we have defined, which is CLR. Let's go ahead and save that. We can see the value is displayed here. The other way is we can destructure the prop object. Then we can directly access the CLR property, and in here instead of props.clr we can directly type CLR. You can see the output remains the same. We have seen how to pass data from parent to child using props. For the next task, let's see how to collect data from the child component to the parent component. To do that, we have to pass in functions as props to child component. In this example, I have a simple function called myFunction, which is accepting a value. Let's pass that function as a prop to our child component. For the name, let's type CLK equals name of the function. Make sure not to add the parentheses here. And inside the child component, let's access that function using the prop name, which is CLK. We need to add a button. So let's first introduce a fragment here. And in the onClick event handler, we will call that function, which is CLK. As for the parameter, let's pass in 5. Save that. Let's click the button and see. You can see the value is displayed from the parent component. Let's now see how to work with nested elements and children prop when working with JSX. To illustrate this, I have set up a simple scenario. First, we have a component named app, and then a component named parent, which is having a header 1 tag, then child component, which is having a header 2 tag, finally a grandchild component, which is having a header 3 tag. First, let's import the parent component and display it in here. You can see it is displaying properly here. Next, we need to import the child component also here. When you refresh, you can see that the child component is not displayed, which is having the header 2 tag here. That is because we have not told our parent component to display its children. To do that, we can simply add the children as a prop. This is a reserved keyword in React. Under the header 1 tag, we can simply type children. Let's go ahead and save that. You can see the header 2 is displayed. Let's try that with grandchild also. Grandchild should be displayed under child component. So in the child component, let's add children prop. Inside an expression, save that. You can see the header 3 is displayed. Each of these components can have their own functionality defined in them, along with the children prop, so the nested components can display properly with JSX. We have come to the end of this video, and I want to thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Check the video description for more awesome content. Stay safe until we meet on the next one.